All right. Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second ever Squash Canada Coach Professional Development webinar as part of a series of them that we're doing over the next 2 or 3 months. Today's topic is the CAC liability insurance program and insurance in general that we hope you can take some key information back for yourself as well as to any other coaches you know regarding the all-important insurance aspect with regards to coaching. Our presenter today is Sean Bell, who works for CIBI, who oversees the program for the Coaching Association of Canada. And he's going to talk to you about the insurance stuff, as I mentioned. A couple of quick ground rules. We are recording this presentation, and I ask that you just keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation. And when Sean is done, because we have a nice small group, I'll do a roll call one by one and let you ask any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Sean, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jeff, and thanks everyone for coming online today. And hopefully you get a little bit of something to take away from this. I mean, well, as Jeff mentioned, we do the Coach Canada insurance program for coaches across Canada. Well, that includes squash coaches. In fact, quite a few of you of your colleagues are enrolled. And so it's sort of, in conjunction with that and Squash Canada that we know we're going to put on a little bit of a risk management seminar for those of you who are, already well adverse at that. Sure, you might take a little bit of detail away. For those of you not, I'm sure you're going to get a little more out of it. And that will segue into, a little bit about what, my office's program of insurance necessarily does. Jeff, can you just go through maybe to 2 slides here? So yeah, so I guess I'm pretty sure I know all but one of you. Sorry, I know one. Don't know all of you, but one I know for sure through Ontario. So this question may have been breached the last time we saw you, but I'd like to start off a little bit of a conversation. And while we want to wait for questions at the end, I'm happy to take some kind of responses here, and please feel free to talk openly. Who here likes insurance, or alternately, who here likes to buy insurance? Does anyone have a comment to that? Not too many. I mean, certainly no comment is a good comment. It used to be, 5-10 years ago where everybody used that opportunity to kind of complain. But I'll take the no responses to be sort of, you're indifferent. And I think what's happening, we're certainly seeing a change in the consumer habit towards what an insurance policy is. It's certainly an asset to you. And gone are the days where, people frowned upon the process of looking for insurance, buying insurance, and ultimately understanding that it's a personal wealth, it's a personal financial protector, because the consequences of not paying a few $100s today per year can certainly affect. Next slide, Jeff. So as of today, what is insurance? We'll talk about that. Why we need to purchase insurance and who needs to purchase insurance. I'm not going to bore you, and this is not a legal conversation, but certainly any conversation of insurance and risk management follows the legal question. So there's going to be a bit of the conversation is going to be about the law of the land, and that certainly is paramount when we discuss this. And certainly, just to give you in layman's terms a little about the law, which where this risk management for coaches is going to apply to. So we'll talk about the duty of care, the Occupiers Act of Canada and Ontario, I should say, or the province you are. They're all very similar, and how waivers have gone from an insignificant why are we doing it 15 years ago to today being a very rock hard, solid legal mechanism contract that you can waive that liability of your duty of care in most instances, and we'll waive on that. And all of this is risk management, having these legal contracts in place to protect you guys, between you and your the facility you're renting, between you and you know, as a contract to an employer, and ultimately a legal waiver contract between you and your participant, and how you can, you know, avoid risk. You can never get rid of risk, and ultimately, you know, that little bit of risk that you can't avoid is why you buy the insurance, because you can never really get, you know, the risk curve to zero. We'll end with the last few points. It's just an overview of this insurance program my office facilitates on behalf of Coach Canada, Squash Canada, and you know, the highlights of the program, the coverages that are there, and how to apply. And then ultimately we'll just leave it up to a few questions for you guys at the end, or many if there is enough conversation. Jeff, next slide. So as I said, what is insurance? You know, insurance is in my opinion, and most people's opinion, the number one and the best way to transfer risk. You know, you can never remove risk completely. And there are alternate ways of transferring risk, but really the most cost-benefit way of doing it is to buy a simple insurance policy and transfer, you know, that risk to a company. Risk management plays a big role in this. Ultimately, I mean, I've said it before, you can't risk manage everything, but insurance companies, in order to get insured, want to see a proper level of risk management and protocols around all of the aspects of the business you do. And we're going to obviously reach on one of those aspects, and that's the waiver. And then speak again and get into the conversation and the definitions of your duty of care, contractual exclusion to remove that liability, and certain what makes a good waiver and release of liability. Next slide. So why do coaches need insurance? Well, I mean, ultimately, most coaches get insurance for the first time, and whether that's good or bad is because they are contractually, legally obligated to buy insurance. So they are signing a contract with X company, and that company says, well, you can sign and work. You need a confirmation of insurance. So that's certainly why. You know, why you need insurance, but you know, who needs insurance? Everyone needs insurance, regardless of a legal contract. You know, without that legal contract, as we said, it's a way to prevent, you know, future financial loss due to just having a bad morning one day, and you just don't want that. So next slide. So again, it's a good idea to get in a little bit about the law of the land, and we're dealing with tort law here. So this is civil law. Like, this is not in the most case criminal. This is all regarding an Occupier's Liability Act, which basically states that any person in possession of premises, control over the conditions of a premises, and control over who can enter has a duty of care. Meaning that they're responsible for the outcome, and particularly if you've never mentioned the possibility of that outcome. And that's certainly what the law which addresses these waiver. So you as an occupier have a duty to take such care of these circumstances, and anything else will come back on you. Now, why this is important, and more so today, is we're seeing a lot of claims regarding this, where it was, well, I have a waiver size, well, and we'll explain it later on in the slides how you have to, you know, risk manage and take a little more further action than just the waiver. You know, the waivers, as I said, 15 years ago, weren't accepted much legally in the courts or by the insurers. This has changed, but what we're seeing right now is even further beyond just having a waiver signed. As an occupier, so you guys are renting facilities, space, whether it's dry land or whether it's courts, you have to do more than just, you know, a duty of care and take reasonable care and telling people what the inherent risks are, or what you might change to the court that might cause further injury. Well, you got to go beyond that, because it used to be 10 years ago where you rented a facility and there was a claim regarding a lack of first aid or a lack of defibrillators or a lack of the 911 didn't know how to enter the facility. Well, that used to be all on the owners of the facility. But now as occupiers of the facilities, you assume as much liability, and I'll get into a little more about that there. So we're seeing the laws, the law being interpreted differently. So waivers are becoming a lot more essential, or absolutely essential, are rock hard if done properly, and we'll explain what properly means. But once you occupy a facility, just don't stop at getting a waiver signed. You have to make sure of the conditions that you feel should be met are there, and that's your legal liability. Next slide, please. So what's a waiver? A waiver, as I mentioned, is a way to contractually exclude your duty of care. Okay, so it removes that duty of care in a contractual waiver, so you can restrict and modify, exclude the duty of care, provided that you take reasonable steps to bring such restriction, modification, or exclusion to the attention of person to whom the duty is owned. Okay, there are essentially three major types of waivers. We're mainly addressing the printed and signed executed waiver, although a ticket waiver and a sign waiver are also legally being enforced. All three of them together are certainly the best case scenario. And as my case law scenario later in the slides will show, a lot of this is coming out of skiing, downhill skiing. It sees the most amount of claims, both insured and uninsured. And if anyone skis here, they notice that when you buy a lift ticket, the ticket you sign on the dotted line, you see it on the back of your ticket, and you have a sign beside the ticket box office and at the base of the chairlift. All three together create a very rock hard legal scenario for you. Okay, and ultimately, what makes more, the next part is what makes more towards a good waiver. It's prominently presented to the attention of the signatory. How the scope of release is worded to cover the conduct of the defendant and be reasonably enforceable and unconscionable. So these are really important aspects that need to be present in a waiver. And certainly my office has examples of these, which, we don't like to say, here's, take your waiver and say this is good or bad. That's meant for the law professions. What we can do here is say, here is what we have, a group of rock hard, solid legal waivers which have held the test of courts, and happy for you guys to use them. Okay, next slide. And just a little bit of a comment on the courts used to agree with this, that if you signed a waiver and you used the defense that I didn't, or argument that I'm suing anyways because I didn't read it, I didn't see it, and I didn't understand it. Well, certainly the times have changed. If your waiver is set up structurally with the components I've mentioned and to mention, they can't argue that. And if you're of compatible mind and you want to sue somebody after signing a waiver, and you got injured on just because of the inherent risk of the sport, nobody else did, third party did, then you can't use this argument. Next slide. A little bit more about what needs to be part of a waiver. Again, I'm not showing you a specific example of a waiver, but you can use these points to add to one you use, or again, if you'd like to speak to us after, we can certainly help out with some other resources around this. But a waiver needs to be bold letters, capitalized, and highlighted language, okay? So the title, the release of liability, waiver of claims, assumption of risks, and identity agreement need to be really bolded, okay? It's really good if you have not just one signature, but you're having the participant initial every clause, or effectively the major clauses that you think are important to the scope of operation, in this case squash. So if there's something specific, so going beyond just a final signature at the end, hereby agreeing, then boxes for particular sections do work very well. It just shows that the participant did go through it. It obviously being mandatory, supporting them, as I said, with signing. So not just having the waiver signed, but having that legal liability language posted somewhere else. Clear identification of the document, and intent are important. The release, the waiver, and indemnity agreement. Jurisdictional clause is absolutely paramount. And these clauses, again, these are generally pretty generic clauses, but there's really, you speak to multiple lawyers or you go get templates, they're all going to be very similar clauses, meaning the assumption of risk, the release, waiver, and indemnity, and the jurisdictional clauses on these should all be really similarly written, no matter who you speak to. And someone in BC should have BC. It needs to be within the courts of the province versus having it worldwide. I mean, if you do operate worldwide, you can, this is something that, or you do interprovincial, then it's something you may want to tweak, and that would be a good thing to change and add to the 2-year waiver, and then maybe having an initial box because it's a little bit outside the box. But people forget the jurisdiction, and then ultimately a signed and witnessed acknowledgement. Okay, it's important to have that there. The scope of waivers, it really needs to have itemized the nature of the sport. So all of yours aren't going to talk about snowboarding. It's going to talk about the sport in general. So don't make sure that the actual activity is mentioned. It needs to be there. The language needs to be there, or else it will not be admissible. Okay. The types of risks. It's not just say there's a possibility of injury, but be precise. Collision with a wall, hit by a racket. These are eye injuries. These are all common potential injuries, and that should probably be itemized. That just only helps the legality of it all. Keep the language simple as possible. And then ensure that all participants are covered. So wrinkles, meaning what are some issues we're seeing with waivers? And this may take a total wrinkle to the entire presentation, but and this is a question: is anybody aware whether a minor or a guardian of a minor can sign a waiver? Does anyone know the answer to that? Yes or no? I can't hear anybody, Jeff. Bottom line is the wrinkle here is a minor cannot waive their liability, and a guardian cannot either. So I guess. There's a Supreme Court of Canada course that case that this came out of, unrelated to squash at all. But what was determined by the courts is that a minor cannot waive liability, or a guardian of a minor can't waive. So most of you probably are coaching minors, maybe not. But for the minors you're coaching, then you might say, well, what's the point of all this? Well, I mean, they can still sue you. The minor, the guardian of the minor, because even though they've executed a waiver, but we don't recommend you get rid of the waiver process, because it is always a very good opportunity before you start an operations to start an activity. It gives you that space and time to have the conversation with the athlete, with the parents, that there is an inherent risk to this. However, being executed, they can still face injury and pick up the phone and call a lawyer and sue, and the courts will not hold up a waiver executed by a guardian of a minor. They will let it go through the courts. Electronic waivers, these are legal, so there's no more wrinkles to this. Although, as someone who, has signed waivers and has lots of clients that go through this, we love the face-to-face waiver, our data shows that those people are a lot less likely to pick up the phone and call the lawyer, even though they know the waiver cannot release the liability of a minor. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so to give you a little bit of, I originally talked about how waivers were, kind of thought of as a waste of time, and that only was because the courts didn't really use them; they didn't qualify them. And now this has changed substantially, and now there's been a few cases over the last decade, almost 2 decades, where the laws of the land are changed, and the courts basically said, well, you know what, we're fed up with this. And ultimately what the Occupiers Liability Act allows for the release of liability. So why are these not being withheld in the courts? And ultimately this was a major case. And again, I said skiing, a lot has come out of the ski hill operations with respect to liability and waivers. And effectively, the case study, a case law with Tremoletti and the Blue Mountains was sort of a precedent case where the judge said enough's enough, this is not going to trial. The plaintiff was a lawyer himself who had skied at Blue Mountain many years. He was a season ticket holder. He had signed a waiver which withheld the tests that we had talked about on the other slides, which he had signed, which was the same waiver Blue Mountain had used over the term over the last few years. And that the Blue Mountain did everything that they had possibly done. They had them sign it, initial it. It was posted. There was a sign, and it was on the back of his lift ticket. So this gentleman went skiing and basically hit a hazard, which was well shown with. The red tape and whatnot. He hurt himself, he injured himself, and he tried to sue. Okay. Well, it did get to the court. Okay. But what the judge made, it was a summary decision. So, and what a summary judgment is we're if our rules around a rock hard legal waiver were met, and the plaintiff was of sound mind of an intelligence who executed it, we're not letting this go to trial. We're not burdening our courts down, and this guy doesn't deserve, because he, assumed the risks of the ski hill, and there was no sole negligence beyond the inherent risks of the sport. Next slide. Okay, and so around the waiver, things do happen. And it could be an injury, and all this is just about reporting. As I mentioned, when you go into a facility, make sure you do check for some of the first aid, because you are liable, even with a waiver. If 911 doesn't know how to get access to the site, and that 20-minute delay causes something more severe, you're liable. Okay, so. Like we want you to, be preventative and preemptive. If injuries do happen, then these are some things to really follow, because it's only going to help your position legally. And I mean, the big one is getting signed statements at the time, and having any witness do the same. Because I can tell you, as you may not think it's a small matter, but a couple months later, and you get a statement of claim, and the participant thinks elsewise. So any small injury accident that happens, you really want to do an accident investigation. You want to photograph what happened, marks to the individual, get those, and take down anybody's statement, because if the claim does arise, it's only going to help your situation, whether that's an insurable, not a claim or not. You want to make sure you've covered your basis, and you've done the preventative or the preemptive measures to reduce some liability in the event that you are sued. Next slide. Okay, so I mean, that touches on a little bit of risk management. I mean, risk management as far as waivers and the Occupiers Act. Obviously, risk management can can talk, can be many other facets of your operation. This is a big one. This is one we get a lot of questions on. Do I need to sign waiver? Now, a little bit about, insuring your risk and what my office does provide. So as mentioned, it's an association program through Coach Canada, which all or most of you, are members in good standing. And it covers all coaches in Canada with a valid updated NCCP number, as well as the chartered professional coaches. There might be some online today, I don't know, as well as coach developers, which are coaches of coaches. So certainly a lot of sports, and that's a growing field where coach developers aren't insured through their provincial association. Next slide. Okay, the main program is built around general liability, so that is third-party coverage in the event that someone alleges you're negligent and causes a claim for bodily injury or property damage. So effectively injury to somebody, third party, or damages to property, okay? There are some, additional benefit. There's professional liability baked into that. Not all of you would necessarily need it, but we're seeing a gray line in the courts now with respect to general professional. In the definition, it's black and white, but we're seeing the courts say, well, this is not a general liability matter, this is professional liability. And as a coach, you do assume professional liability because you provide a professional service. And if anybody was to allege something against you that wasn't bodily injury or property damage, it's almost effectively under the professional lines. So, really the rule of thumb is a financial loss someone incurs, but it's not bound by that. In order to just not, have any gray area, the program provides professional liability. It's very comprehensive coverage. There's abuse liability included. It's sub-limited. It's not to the full policy limits, which are $2 million general, $1 million professional, and $500,000 abuse. There's medical malpractice. That's liability assumed for basic first aid. So you probably all have first aid cover certificate. If you apply first aid and something dramatically goes wrong, this policy is not going to say, well, that's medical mal, we're excluding that. Then it has. There's sport accident cover. Now, the sport accident coverage is effectively a medical benefits policy to you guys. It's not a substitute for an employer medical program because there's no disability, there's no lost wages, but it certainly pays out in the event that you are injured. Anything or most things over and above your provincial healthcare program, as well as medical rehab, well, that's above the provincial care, and also lump sum payments out to you based on the injury. So from everything from a loss of an arm to a leg to outright death, there's a lump sum payout under that policy. So it's a little bit of it's a first party cover, meaning it's your benefit. It doesn't go to anyone, and it's not there if someone sues you. It's there for your own purpose. Next slide. Okay, and again, I've talked about a lot about this. These are the base policy. So you'll see on, for those that have never gone to my website, it outlines all of this. You would pick one of three categories: chartered professional and or NCCP and or coach developer. The base policy comes with $2 million general, $2 million products and completed. Oh, it is $2 million professional, my bad. 200,000 non-owned, 2 million non-owned, 2 million tenants. And that's the base policy plus the abuse liability and the accidental death and dismemberment. Next policy. Next slide. Oh, the incidental mal, the 500 abuse, the sport accident, the principal sum is 50 grand. And those are some of the subcategories based on, additional medical bills that you may get. Outside, that's not shown here, is there's a schedule of payments based on the type of injury. So we can, I'm not going to put all those details of the policy up today, but if you want to go online and or contact us, we can. It's a worldwide policy, so that takes the off season or your travels into hand, please understand that a worldwide policy, claims must be brought against you in North America. So if you're going to China and you're sued, well, coverage is awarded for an event that happens in China, but you're not. The case has to come within a court of North America. If they sue you in a court of China, unfortunately, that's not. Next slide. There is a program for those of you going to go on. The last couple questions on the application there's a couple additional optional coverages. The second one of the two is major property. So for squash coaches, it's not as generally applied for. Coaching in Canada with higher equipment sort of assets, they can add their physical content. You guys can add your rackets, but again, there's probably not enough value there to pay for premium, including a deductible. I wanted to leave the legal expense because it is an option on the program. It's I would say less than a quarter of the overall coaches in Canada have signed up for it, but I think the traction's getting more. People understand it. I mean, because they look at legal expense. It's almost the cost of the other base program. It's a little bit less. So I think it kind of prevents people from really looking at it. But I do stress that, people do consider this because this is your own legal advice. So whether it's just 24/7, you want to pick up the phone and ask a question legally, you have that access. If you actually had a matter where the insurer agrees that, and based on the coverages on the policy, that you have right to go after this person contractually, a neighbor, then that's awarded to you. You don't have to stress about the cost of calling a lawyer. And then if this was a case that you felt strongly behind and wanted to proceed against somebody, this award. So this is really first party offensive coverage versus the other coverages we've mentioned on the program are all third party. If someone comes after you, well, what happens if you need some help? So, I mean, if anyone on the line one day a year wants to call a lawyer for advice, it pays for itself because it's, under a couple $100. And, if you call a lawyer, a good lawyer, you're going to get a $500 bill. So I think there's even coverage, and I shouldn't say that, but I'm pretty confident in all advice, if you have a speeding ticket. So this will fight those courts as well for you. So there's some CRA coverage. And again, the more details are on our website, and ultimately feel free to contact us regarding more of that body of that policy. But a lot of coaches overlook it. I think, to qualify, you guys qualify for the program, so you're getting that coverage is not available to the common person off the street who wants to just buy a legal defense policy. They have to be part of a qualified program, or businesses can buy that policy one-off, but individuals cannot anymore in Canada. Next slide. So I mentioned this again, who's covered: a coach developer, a coach of coach, a base NCCB coach, which are, there's 60,000 in Canada. And registered and chartered professional coaches, which are about 1,100 of you guys, and I'm not sure if any of you are such online. Next slide. Okay, well, I mean, that gets through quite a bit. I know I asked one or two questions after said I wouldn't ask questions, but and I didn't hear anybody, so I'm not sure if I don't have my volume on. Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, you are good. No, I think everybody just had their microphones muted, and
so anyone that tried to answer me, if they tried to answer me, nothing really came up. So I don't know if everybody wants to unmute your microphones. If you'd like me to go back in slides, I'm happy to. If you'd like to just ask any question regarding any of it, anything at all, let me know.
So yeah, I encourage to open the floor now to questions, and maybe with a small group, we'll kind of start at the top. And Brent, you're at the top of my list. Any questions? You want to get the ball rolling?
Brent's muted.
Oh,
hi, sorry, I'm here now. So I'm a coach at a program called Urban Squash Toronto, which is
I know it well. Yep.
Yes. So yeah, my questions primarily pertain to all youth. Obviously, we operate with ages 12 to 18. we have currently run into the problem as we've discussed renewing insurance. That we used to go on trips. We used to do a lot of trips. Our U.S. counterparts are a huge part of the community, being that we're the only one in Canada, but 20 in the States. And we've recently been told that we can essentially not travel unless each student has a parent or guardian with them. Is that something, just to sort of discuss maybe the guidelines on trips, because I know a lot of people do it often in Canada or Ontario. Coaches take kids to tournaments.
So no, there's no limitation to that, Brent. Sorry, I don't know if I cut you off before you finished your question, and I'm aware of the UST situation, obviously, which I think we'll be able to address. But so this program, there's no limitation to that. Now, when you sign up for the policy, you're getting abuse liability. As I said, as a base 500,000, you can increase that subject to some underwriting protocol. But we ask two things. Obviously, you've got to follow the making ethical decisions module of Coach Canada. And if you say on your application to us that you do coach minors and you do overnight, there will be some follow-up questions. So we will underwrite it. And certainly, but it's not going to be a dead end like UST. You guys will, have that ability to go. When you guys have if you guys have like a camp you guys organize, like I know a lot of coaches organize in the summer. They'll go away, maybe not less with squash because you need a physical court. You can't just pick up your bikes or your skis and go and train somewhere in the world. What we really want to get away from, though, is the coach organizing all the transportation and the lodging. Okay, that adds another sort of aspect of your liability, which you may not realize you're assuming. So if you're doing planned camps, off-site camps, overnight camps outside of the town you work, we don't recommend you book all the lodging and or transportation. So I don't know if that changes anything, Brent, but certainly we don't have a requirement right now that the insurer doesn't have the requirement that at least one guardian per participant's there.
Okay. All right.
You want good ratios, but it's certainly not 1-1, not one guardian per student.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. I think we'll be in touch separate about this.
I think we will. Okay. No, feel free, like everybody else can too. Okay.
Great.
And can I add? And Brent made a good point. Like, I guess part of this program was designed for two reasons. Well, you're seeing across Canada, across the world, sports organizations, as well as even provincial governments, legalize not insuring coaches. So, at the other hand, is a lot of coaches maybe have some coverage or don't know what they're covered for. Well, even if you think there's a little bit of coverage under X association, you still want this policy, okay? Because it's going to fill in a lot of gaps that I can promise you most associations have very bare bones coverage. They don't have an accidental death and dismemberment policy. They don't have professional liability, and not many have abuse liability, shockingly enough. So, and they may have only I'm just saying, if they $1 million limit, they don't have enough limit. Well, what this policy does is, it's almost contingent too. So if you do have some coverage, but it's not very enough, or you have some coverage, but not something X, Y, then this will step in. So a lot of coaches, I have some coverage under this association. Well, I still think this is almost like an excess policy to that, right? So if there is coverage under Association X, or your provincial association, I'd still strongly recommend considering this because, you're rounding out your insurance program and you're giving yourself a little more benefit. Next.
Great. Clifford, any questions?
Sean, I apologize.
I can't hear it.
Oh, Clifford, we can
It was just very, very mute.
Does that help at all if I speak?
Yeah, that does now. Yes.
That's a little better.
All right. I apologize. I came in a little late to the meeting. We just have a small group of people, and we make it necessary that everyone gets a Squash Ontario membership, and our club is a member, and also Ontario Tennis Association. And like you just covered, this is over and above that. And I apologize. I missed the part of the cost of the first part of in policy. I understand that the second part is $250, but what's the first part worth?
Second part, $250. Well, no, it depends what category. So there's 3 categories, and again, so depending on, are you a chartered professional coach or are you an NCCP coach?
Yes, NCCP.
So you're the middle category, and sorry, I don't have everything offhand. It's $220 now. I guess I should. So NCCPP as of today is $225. Okay, annually, plus depending on your province you reside in, provincial sales tax. The options include increasing the limits on some of those existing coverages or adding. I'm not sure what ones you didn't hear. So if you wanted to get the legal expense coverage added to the package, it's an additional $195. And that was sort of what I was saying, is that people like, oh, I get all this coverage for $225, but then I get this legal expense $195. Well, you're getting a lot of, anyway. So did that answer you?
Yeah, but I've got that part. Now, my issue is that this coverage would be for me personally. It wouldn't be for my organization.
No, exactly. Well, no, your organization, if it's coaching, Clifford, like we can put the policy in a company name. This is not for a sport camp. This is not for a commercial operation where you have multiple employees and coaches working under your behalf. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're a registered nonprofit, and we're trying to create community activity and grow sport. And basically, there's lots of other companies pushing their products. We're trying to push health for the kids.
So you're cutting in and out a little bit. You're pushing which?
Health for kids. Keep them active, playing sport. And,
yeah.
So we're a nonprofit, and a lot of the guys are out there doing a good thing, but I don't want to get it all turned bad when they're doing something good.
But like, this isn't you personal, or like a lot of coaches operate under a corporation, whether it's for tax reasons or not, or liability reasons. So but this wouldn't cover an organization who, Clifford, are you in the Brighton area?
No, we're located in Timmins, Ontario. I used to play.
Oh, sorry, someone contacted me, and I forget the individual's name, squash-wise, east of Toronto, and had similar sort of organization. So again, if the operation of a nonprofit is coaching, and the definition of coach is very broad and subjective, certainly this would cover you, but it's not covering employees. If everything is within the realm of coaching of the nonprofit, and health is, then you're covered. But it's not covering your employees, assuming that you've got employees or anything outside the coaching realm. So I think, Clifford, you're probably looking at more of a corporate annual policy for something like that. But certainly, your operation within that nonprofit, you'd get a lot of coverage from carrying one of these coach policies.
Oh, thank you, Sean.
I should also preface that your employees aren't covered, but volunteers are covered. So if you're coaching on and you have 3 support staff who are volunteering, they're insured under your policy. If you're paying them $1, the support staff, they need their own coach policy. This will not cover them, just so
okay.
you know.
That's
okay?
A good question, because
a lot of people have like a coach who's volunteering to learn the ropes. They're young, junior, and they're just setting up the courts, and then they're volunteering, and that's covered. Okay.
Perfect. So moving on, assuming Clifford, you're good. Julie, any questions?
Actually, Sean just answered that one about. I had a question about volunteers, so he just answered that. Also,
yeah, as long as the volunteer is doing a coaching operation and they're not massaging the athlete, and so yeah, that's generally that's allowed. And if you pay them $1, they would need their own particular $225 policy.
Okay, and so also there's no distinction between a part-time coach and a full-time coach. Is the
No.
price
No,
basically?
and a full-time coach is getting more benefit just because, just like, well, I try to use in a comparable that people are related to. Like if someone has a motorcycle, their insurance is rated based on a seasonality, right? But there's no refund. So again, if you're a full-time coach, you're getting way more benefit than someone who might coach 2 weeks in the winter, right? It's the same price.
Same price. Okay.
Yeah. So again, the fuller time coaches are getting more benefit because, I mean, they're getting that same seasonal price. So what we used to do, what we didn't used to do, what we do, we used to do what was happening is we used to do a pro rata policy. So next week the program renews. It follows the same date every year, but you can join it at any time through the year. Now the questions we get is, well, there's 6 months left in the year. I'm not. Why is it not half the price? So it's a fully earned policy, just like a motorcycle policy. So what was happening was we were in November, December getting hockey, skiing, squash coaches signing up for the program and expecting to only pay 2, 3, 4 months of premium. So just so we can look at it, if for the part-time coaches out there that aren't full-time, and you come to us and say, well, there's only 2, 3 months left until the next renewal, most of my operations were already previous, then we can, make an accommodation.
Okay.
Does that answer everything, Julie?
That's great. Thanks very much, Sean.
Okay, Ronaldo, any questions?
Yes, well, Sean, you were the one. Yes, we've been in touch, and
you owe me an email, I think, don't you?
I owe you an email. I'm about to send that form.
I just looked at my inbox. I thought I forgot you, so I'm glad I wasn't me anyway.
No. I am about to send that as
okay, good. Good.
Getting back to now, I have a question.
You got to get Josh to sign up too. Josh said he was going to, and I haven't heard from him.
Josh, I think he already had it. He just needed to add, I think, Richmond Hill.
All right, yeah, I'm just kidding.
That's what he told me, and Rudy as well. Anyway,
okay,
yeah,
great.
There. No, but my question is regarding the legal expense. So
yeah, okay.
Because my question to you was going to be, do you have a waiver format for squash?
I do.
I did a copy. Okay, so you have someone you can.
Yeah, and again, I mean, when you become clients and you become registered in the program, we do have all of this for your disposal. So if you're worried about making sure the waiver you have or don't have is not good, or you don't have one then not existent, then we can give it to you. But we're not telling you that this is not like we can't be brought in legally to a situation. These are waivers that generally have stood up. Insurance companies accept them, and I won't lie to you, when you see the one we like to use, it looks a lot like the ski hill waiver with some yellow and red and bold and all that stuff. So once you become registered, we do provide a lot of these services. One of my slides showed that when you're signed and registered, there's a basket of risk management of information we provide, whether it's a lot like some of it you've heard today on waivers, around abuse. We have a really, really good a basket of material for you guys developing abuse protocols. I mean, a lot of it's good because you've done the making ethical decisions, but certainly there's a lot on, that bring in the law and bring in what the insurers want to see. So that might be good for you too, Ronaldo, just because you've got a group, more of a program around you, and you want to make sure everyone's on the same page on the abuse question. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, we have all that. Once you become registered, we can provide all of this.
Yes, great. And the legal, again, you don't have, again, because even though
what I'll do, I can send you specifically, Jeff, I can send the legal expense brochure policy that the coach you would get if you registered for that legal expense. So you can have a read. It's written in layman's terms, what you get, what you don't get. What contracts are covered, what events are covered, including CRA matters, including fighting your speeding ticket. Okay.
Perfect. And then if let's say I don't know, what I don't understand is the timing. So let's say I sign up in mid-March, that then is 1 year.
Well,
right?
yeah, you're 1 year. So I mean, again,
Okay.
the timing is right here for everyone. March 3rd is the renewal date of the program. So all existing coaches, squash or not, will get a renewal for the next full year. But you can join on March 8th, March 15th. It's the same price. So I'm just saying you might as well register for March 3rd. You get more coverage, more term.
Okay.
So yeah, but you can sign up at every time, and someone like you're probably not going to get unauthorized for a pro rata premium if you come, because you're pretty throughout the year, right? I would imagine.
Yes.
Throughout
the year, yes.
So as we said, these are rated based on most coaches have a seasonal operation. So with a lot of your year sort of ahead of you, through the next winter, then there probably will just be a fully, the full price charge no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah. No. Okay, great. Thanks, Sean. You'll hear from me this weekend. Thanks again.
Yeah, let me know. I'll just wait for your email, okay?
Yes, we'll do that. Yes,
okay.
Thanks.
Steve Dunslow, last but not least.
Well, yeah.
Hey there, Sean. How are you?
Hey, great, Steve. You?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Good. Never know talking into the laptop how good the microphone is.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess, there's been a lot of questions, a lot of things already answered that I was going to ask. One question regarding the club, the facility insurance policies, corporate, there's obviously some crossover with extra coverage as a coach. You're an employee at a club or an affiliated organization. I guess there's differences, right? This is sort of an extension of that.
Yeah, so this is, as I said, this is a contingent excess to that being insufficient or not existing.
Okay.
So you can rack your brain about the club you work at's insurance policy, or they can tell you in detail what is there. I can probably tell you what is there and what's not there. But ultimately, this does access to that, what exists, and also fills in a lot more gaps. Okay? Are you a contractor or an employee to that club?
No, actually neither. No, I'm certainly, I trying to get back into this. I took some time away from the sport, and I just want to capture some of the modules that I missed and get back into it. I mean, there's a lot of times where different clubs, having this type of coverage would be beneficial because I'm not a full-time coach, but there's always those opportunities that come up where people ask, and you want to just
make sure you're protected. Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah.
So for me specifically, maybe not so much the others, but I'm more of a casual coach at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
And in this type of coverage, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think insurance is a bad idea. I work in the construction field, and I do a lot of insurance claims. So I'm kind of familiar with how, things work.
Yeah, but, absolutely. The way we look at it, your risk doing coaching one exposure and risk coaching 1 day a year is really no different than someone doing 100. When I say that, it means maybe the chance of you being sued are higher when you do it every year just because you've got more exposure, but the risks to you are exactly the same, meaning it just takes one bad day, one injury, and a lawsuit against you for 100, for $1 million. That's the same risk and exposure as someone coaching every day. So definitely, and certainly what we're seeing more and more, Steve, is that if you go in and coach at X club as a contractor, they're no longer insuring you. So the days have changed. In fact, Alberta, I don't know if there's any Albertans here, Alberta legalized, the provincial government changed the Sport Alberta Act to state that no coach is insured by a provincial association. I don't understand it. I honestly think it's a cash grab. We don't get it. And also Alberta has a lot of coach developers who are, basically out of luck as well because they got rid of them. So, it's changing. I think it's a bit of corporate shift, risk management shift to try to relieve the corporation of liabilities when they're bringing in all these contractors, but it's happening. So,
right. And one last question. Sorry. So, there's obviously stipulations with the policy. Like, what if, I mean, first aid's obviously paramount, but what if someone forgot to, renew their first aid? Does that sort of nullify some of the...
I don't know about nullify. No, it wouldn't nullify the policy. If like a day went by, midnight crossed, the St. John's expired, and your policy wouldn't be null and void. But on renewal, you would have to then therefore state it. So if an expiry, if on the renewal or when you register initially, you have to state that you've got your valid first aid. Okay. If it expires midterm without renewing it, and a claim came in, no, it would not exclude the loss. It would respond to your claim, but then on the subsequent renewal, you'd have to say you've got it back.
Understood. Gotcha.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Any more questions?
Yes. Any other questions as we get close to the 1 o'clock hour?
Oh, that's good timing.
I mean, if nobody has any general questions at this point, as you can see from the screen, Sean's contact information is there, and what I will do is I will send you the slides to you this week, as well as the brochure that Sean has mentioned, and then you can follow up directly with Sean with any questions and plans for maybe a purchase of a policy if you.
Yeah, well, I guess that's my question. I know Ronaldo's situation, but does everyone else have a policy for their coach as an individual coach? Anyone on this call insured personally? Yet? Not yet. Doesn't sound like. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, we're looking forward to hearing everybody. Hopefully you do all contact me. I don't know if my website was on one of the original slides, but it's just www.cibi.ca. Again, my email, and I'm pretty on my cell phone, so you'll get a response from me very quickly if you want to talk or have a simple question.
Great. Well, on behalf of Squash Canada, Sean, thank you so much for your presentation. And to those who attended today's webinar, again, I will send the slides to you, and we thank you for attending. I will update the CAC locker database today with the webinar so that it will reflect in your profile this week to count towards a PD point towards your maintenance of certification. And again, thank you for attending. Our next webinar is next Tuesday. I encourage you to go online and register if you haven't already. It is mental performance in sports, and we expect it to be a very educational topic just like today. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Sean.